I'm not trying to make fun of you or anything, even though you're a pedophile. I'm just saying that I'm not retracting legality as the modality because I never gave it and taken it away. You falsely assumed that I was talking about legality as the modality that I was using when I was talking about consent and whatnot. So that was just a straw man on your part, and that's what I'm really trying to get you to understand. Like I'm actually trying to help you. Like when you're talking to me about you have to use legal this or legal that, and then in your next breath say, are you talking about this modality, logical modality, legal modality? You automatically just bit yourself in the ass in terms of backtracking, because you're admitting that it's not the only modality I can talk about when I'm referring to consent and rape. That's why I asked you earlier, did rape exist before legal systems, yes or no? Because obviously there's more than one modality when it pertains to whether or not a girl can consent or not. And my reasoning for earlier as to saying why she couldn't consent is because she was a child. And as she was a child, she was underdeveloped in terms of mental maturity, which is the first point that you asked me to clarify what I was talking about. And then you ran off with that legal modality bullshit. So can you please get back to what I'm arguing for?
You're extremely confused on the topic. You're extremely confused right now. You're giving a TED
I just showed how you straw man, and you're saying I'm the one that's confused.
Crazy to me, bro. You spend all of that time yapping on and not give any piece of evidence for the claim that she cannot consent. Wow, that's crazy. Typical Clorox debating tactic where you just go off point. Oh, you deliberately picked this topic, by the way, because you know for a fact that it would be funny to make like pedophilic jokes about Apollo because of these supposed allegations, and you don't even have any evidence for your claims, bro. You don't even have any evidence for the claims that Aisha, for example, cannot consent. I specifically pressed you on this. I've basically laid out the different possible interpretations or means by which could be justifying this claim, and laid out how you'd not be able to justify the claim that she cannot consent, given a legal modality or a physical modality or a logical modality. And basically what just happened was you yapped your way, tried to optically dance around the substance because you have no fucking arguments, bro. And guess what? The only persons you can ever convince this low tier, low IQ debate strategy is just the low tiers in the fucking chat, not someone with the IQ of 70, bro. So again, I'm going to do this one more time. Do you have an argument in favor of the proposition that Aisha cannot, and by cannot, I assume you're saying that she's unable to legally consent? Do you have an argument, yes or no? If you think you've given the argument in this debate, tell me how you have justified that claim. If you do not have any sort of argument which you think has been established in this specific conversation, then we can just go into that argument right here, right now. Stop trying to meta debate and go into a side drama about whether or not I'll shed the box in, because I know for a fact that you are just doing this because you don't have a legitimate argumentative defense for the claim that she was in fact unable to legally consent, or not legally, but just consent generally. So give an argument, dude. Is he muted? That was on me this time. Let me just unmute him. Hello. There you go. Give the argument.
Yes, I was muted, Apollo. And no matter how many times you try to ignore the argument, no matter how many times you try to ignore the argument when I gave the argument, it's not going to change the fact that I gave an argument in the first place. The argument again is that she's not able to consent as a child. Why? Because as a child, she has mental maturity that's underdeveloped. And the development of mental maturity requires things such as the ability to know the ground, not the ground, what's the word? The gravity of things when pertaining to certain situations that they're able to handle. And we see with children, this is almost universally not the case when it comes to things like sex, alcohol, and other things that have lifelong impairments. So I didn't know that I had to lay that out for you, that for most children, it obviously is universally accepted that almost damn near that this is the case. But yes, that is the argument. And running away from the argument of why she wouldn't be able to give consent. Wait a minute. And running away from the fact that she wouldn't be able to give consent because she's a child and children can't have this mental maturity, which you agreed is at the very least, a modality that I could use besides legality. The only person biting themselves in the ass is you.
Yeah, that was really terrible. I'm really sorry about that. But just to address the supposed quote-unquote argument you've given for the claim, right? Hold on, I think I'm freaking speaker. Give me a second. Yeah. just to change my audio output. So just to support the arguments, the horse arguments if given for the claim that she cannot consider, like, oh, look at this, guys, are going to be appealing to sort of consensus. Oh, most people would definitely agree that it is universally blah 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 blah. Not an argument, dude. There's a rule of the possibility of such. So if you're granted that it is logically possible, which it is logically possible for it to be the case that a child of that age can consent, then it would be the case that it is logically possible, and so that claim would be false. The claim that she cannot consent, that's false given a logical modality. Under a physical modality, it would be false because there's no laws of physics or nature which is impeding the sort of ability to consent to having sex. That's retarded. Like, of course, it's fucking physically or logically possible for there to be some sort of child with a sort of, you could say, neurological development who knows all the facts about sex, for example, and knows the consequences which comes with it, the consequences and the responsibilities of relationship and so forth, and as a result of that can, you could say, justifiably agree to this particular activity, right? So given these sorts of like scopes or types of possibilities, that would be a possibility, and so she would be able to consent, right? I don't think any person of the current generation, perhaps, can consent at that age. However, back then, I think it's different. I think, for example, the sort of society you live in, the situations you face on a daily basis, and all of these things are emblematic and helps to shape the mental maturity that someone has. So, for example, in Gaza, for instance, I think the average person, and anyone who is not retarded can agree with this, the average person or the average kid, the average 10-year-old, the average 13-year-old guy or kid in Gaza is far more mentally mature, is far more responsible than the average 30-year-old grown-ass adult in the US who like sits in his mom's basement and not have any single job. He's not faced anywhere near as much as those sort of kids. And those kids, I've seen situations where I've seen multiple kids in that specific region, in that geographical location, who are far more mature, mentally speaking, than grown-ass adults. The reason being that what determines maturity is not necessarily the age, you moron, but rather it's the set of experiences you have which are worthy or which are impactful to make you make better decisions in your world or better decisions in real life. And I think in that specific case scenario, given all the narratives surrounding Aisha and how she was the leader of the women back then and how she was so credible to the point where she was deemed to be credible enough to report hadith about the Prophet ﷺ, then all of these indicates that she has a level of neurological and, you could say, mental maturity, which is unlike most, if not all other people of that age. So for it to appeal to these sort of group of people and say, oh, majority of 9-year-olds cannot consent, therefore the same thing should apply to Aisha, is a trash argument, because even though it's an inductive argument, that argument is equally expected under the hypothesis that she can in fact consent, because she's different from literally every other 9-year-old female in existence. It's a trash dog-piss argument. Last but not least, I've just laid out the idea that these different types of possibilities, whether it's logical possibility, theoretical possibility, empirical or physical possibility, or legal possibility, all of these things would not, in fact, be in correspondence with their point. From a legal standpoint, she would be able to consent because back then, child marriage was allowed. And the funny thing is, if you want to talk about child marriage and the legality of such, child marriage was only banned in New York in 2018. In fact, there was a child marriage in the US in 2012 where a freaking 12-year-old married. So if you want to talk about child marriage, it's not even fully banned. It's in the US, dumb fuck. If you want to talk about the legality of such, back then it was even more prevalent back then in Christianity, in Islam, in majority of the religions back then. Well, that was a normal freaking thing. I'm not saying it's okay because it's a normal thing, but I'm telling you here simply, from a legalistic standpoint, that would not favor or justify or substantiate your wild position right now, your dumb position. So under all the scopes available, your claim would be false, and not to mention have just undercut it and defeated the credibility and the credence of your trash arguments a while ago. So do you have any new arguments to redeem yourself, or are we going to just end the debate right here because you have no other sort of substantive responses to actually justify your dumb claim? Pick a struggle.
Hello? Is this thing on?
Yeah.
Yo, can you hear me? Okay. Yo, let me get that out of the last part out of the way first. Don't ever do Christianity like that. It was acceptable in Islam to do that, yes, but for Christianity, like most marriages would occur to women, which we know was at the very least, considered 16 to 17 and above. So no, child marriage wasn't indicative of that. And no, I'm not talking about legality for the last fucking time. I don't know how many times that I have to tell you that I'm not talking about legality. So all the points that you brought up about legally speaking, Islam allowed rape with kids, so it was okay back then. It was different back then. That makes no fucking sense. Because you would, number one, have to say that there is some sort of mental difference in maturity between those age groups during those different times, which you can't posit at all. And number two, you would have to prove the latter would even correlate to implying a consent of any kind, which you can't, because, that's retarded. Also, Aisha being able to, and this like deals with your broader point from beforehand, like mental maturity being different between age groups isn't really that unheard of, but it never ever talks about children having more mental maturity than adults, even scientifically speaking. And the reason is because brain development is relevant when it talks about somebody's ability to consent or accept the gravity of a situation. Like even in your own like special ed class that you attend to, like I'm sure you find some helmet kids that are like when it comes to accepting like dares or something or pranks you might do on them, not knowing the gravity of what might be happening or you might be being set up or something. This is because brain development actually plays a key role in talking about the ability to consent, such as myelination, synaptic pruning, emotional regulation, implications, and being able to draw those with the brain. Neuroplasticity is what you're referring to when you're talking about a child's ability to absorb things at a young age. Most adults can't even interpret a second language or even another language if they never spoke one, but children can absorb in a language and like learn it perfectly sometimes, like almost like 9 times out of 10. Like I know you probably pay attention to like the academics and kids' schools and their brains, so I know you're very interested in that. So that's just a few scientific facts for you. Also, the notion that all of this circling back to you to bite you in the ass doesn't point to my position being even slightly more reasonably the case, and that there has to be like some weird equal interpretation with you is completely retarded, because again, you're ignoring what I'm using as an argument and actually refuting it. And if you want to end it, it's fine, but I'm tired of pedophiles defending child marriage as is, so this is like an easy GG's. It's never been anything new. That's all I have to say. Do I get servitude now?
Genuinely that response actually works, then I'm really concerned about your mental health first and foremost. Secondly, moving on to the arguments or the supposed attempt to respond to my arguments, really. You're like, Apollo, you're basically saying that if Islam think rape was okay back then, therefore was okay. Dude, first and foremost, the statement is so loaded right there, okay? This is the typical dishonest Tier 4 to 7 rhetorical performance and strategy from the Tier 8 debater, Clorox, okay? It's when you like basically make loaded statements which has presuppositions which is yet to be established, okay? When you're going to be making the claim, for example, that, you believe that Islam allowed rape back then. No, I don't even grant that Islam even allowed rape to begin with at any moment in time, okay? Given the definition we're operating under this conversation, okay? I don't even grant that claim first and foremost. You haven't established that claim being correct. I've sent the sources, by the way.
I know you don't grant it. I proved it right afterwards.
Just stop talking for a second, retard. It's my turn now, okay? Just relax for a second, okay? So as it relates to the claim that you made specifically, you said, child marriage never happened in Christianity. That's retarded. First and foremost, it was prevalent. The age of consent was much lower back then. If you're going to be tracing back to the times of, like, for example, when Christianity was prevalent in Europe, and for example, in the Caribbean, for instance, when the Europeans take over the Caribbean countries and so forth, the age of consent was not 18, you moron. The age of consent was lower than 18. There have been several case scenarios of there literally being child marriages. In fact, the U.S., by the way, some of the U.S. cultures and values are shaped by Christian values, right? And we know for a fact that it has been established, and I posted the links in the chat, whereas the U.S., the United States, literally allowed for child marriage. It was still, and I'm pretty sure it's still legal. It's very niche, a bit like 1 or 2 places. But it was even allowed in New York. Up until 2018, it was banned from New York. There was literally child marriage of like a 12-year-old getting married in this 21st century before or after 2010, post 2010 era in the US. Which, by the way, a lot of the values in the US, by the way, which the leftists are trying to transform, are shaped by, guess what? Your religious values, Christianity, you dumb fucking loser. So yes, Christianity did in fact espouse marriage towards kids, or you could say kids who are younger than 18. Yes, of course that's the case. In fact, lower than 16, if anything. You don't even know the facts about your own religion, but you're here trying to talk about my religion. You're here trying to condemn my religion. You're here trying to criticize my religion. You don't have the knowledge of my religion to make any sort of substantive, productive, intelligent critiques or polemics, and you don't even have the knowledge in your own religion to acknowledge the fact that your religion embraces the same sort of values about marriage that my religion does, you dumb retard. So just to be clear on this, if you're not an underdeveloped ape, you'd have understood that. But just to move on from that, you also have not addressed the point of giving a substantial argument, and now he feels the need to unmute himself to speak over me because he's so insecure about the rhetoric. The other part, though, you've quite literally not even addressed the logical possibility claim, the physical possibility claim, the legal possibility claim. If anything, I'm just going to take it that you're not addressing those claims and me establishing that it would be legally okay, or legally okay back then for that to be a marriage or relationship, and it being logically and physically possible, that you in fact would not deny those claims. I'm just going to take it that you can see that from a legal or physical or logical modality, it would be the case that she can in fact consent. And last but not least, just to not waste people's time here, just to get things wrapping up, you made the claim that the ability to basically learn better or adapt to languages is what neuroplasticity is. You don't even know what neuroplasticity is, you dumb moron. Neuroplasticity is simply the cognitive framework, whereas you have one specific brain part which is able to subserve the function of a lost brain part, which is proven by lesion experiments in the rat cases, you dumb fucking moron. You don't even know the person, by the way. I can bet if I ask you the scientist who has proven neuroplasticity using rat lesion experiments, you don't even know that answer. You also don't even know what I was just talking about a while ago, but you don't even know anything regarding neuroscience, regarding religion, regarding philosophical argumentation, nothing whatsoever. You're just a dishonest sophist who thinks for some reason that making this sort of, like you could say, nonchalant approach is going to convince any person who is actually intelligent that you know what you're talking about, and really, truly, we both know you don't. So I'm going to try again with you. Just give an argument, one last chance, as to why she cannot consent. She has no sort of ability to consent, given the information we have available. If you fail again for the fourth time, I'm going to take this to be a waste of my time, and we can just head to conclusions, gladly. Go ahead, Chimcham.
Silly pedophile. Your rhetoric doesn't work here. Okay, let's work backwards, actually, because neuroplasticity actually is what I was talking about that is relevant when it comes to, like, pertaining to learning languages and stuff. That actually highlights the main point of why your argument doesn't follow. And instead of, you know, actually addressing why that could be wrong, you're just ignoring it and say, you don't know what neuroplasticity means. Neuroplasticity doesn't mean that. Neuroplasticity is literally the brain's plasticity or ability to recognize and adapt. It's still developing during adolescence and early adulthood. This can affect the ability to make informed decisions and provide consent. Okay, so you were just retarded in saying that that had nothing to do with that. We just proved that right now. Also, I said that child marriage wasn't permissible in Christianity, not that Christians never married kids. Obviously, there are some people professing to be Christian or some pastors that have really Apollo-esque origin stories. Like, we get them the fuck out of here. We know that that happens from time to time. But your doctrine allows for the raping of kids, and before you say that I didn't prove that, I actually did prove that with my reasoning that you ignored. We see that you continue to shadow box and ignore arguments that actually disprove your position.
He did it against Zizu. He's shadow boxing now.
I know, right? Like, this is what he's doing the whole. But chill for a second. Okay, I also said that the implications of not just neuroplasticity, but also brain development, emotional regulation, synaptic pruning, and myelination are things that are key to making informed decisions and understanding the gravities of situations. And you didn't respond to my point either that that would lead to consent. Neither did you respond to my counterpoint to yours talking about, well, Aisha was somebody who was able to recite hadith and whatnot. And I just used the neuroplasticity as an example of children being able to absorb more information than adults. And it doesn't follow that they're more mentally mature because of that. Like, that was just retarded on your part. And yes, your plasticity will reduce as you age, But that doesn't mean that now senior citizens can't consent or retired people can't consent. Obviously, what differs is not just your ability to learn and regurgitate something, it's able to understand the concepts of what you're talking about situation based. So in a scenario where you have a really, really big gravity of things that could have a multitude of consequences, you need to not only be aware of them and be informed of them, you also have to have a conceptual understanding of the gravity of those consequences and what it could lead to. This is why smaller consequences usually happen to kids rather than bigger ones. And even in your example, when you say Aisha is like separate from the rest because her like ability to like regurgitate information is really high compared to others. You even agree with me on this point that I'm making that completely shits on what you're actually saying. Also, Mr. Pedophile, you also have to realize that when you're ignoring statements, you can't just say that, oh, you have no argument, because everybody here can hear what I'm saying. You just look really shitty not responding to them. And I'm trying to help you out as much as I can rhetorically. I can't help you out when police find child porn on your laptop, but all I can do is just like advise you. Please engage with the argument rather than dismissing it just because it doesn't align with your pedo child marrying narrative. That's all.
That was fucking hilarious. So moving on. So his whole argument is simply talking about the idea of, oh, you know, if you're making this claim, then don't make police find you. Fucking moron. No one said it's legally permissible to have child marriage in the current day, you dumb fucking idiots. When people are making when people defending religions are making the claim that it is okay, for example, for child marriage to be a thing back then, they're not making a moralistic claim in most cases. They're making a legal claim. They're making the claim about legal consent and what would shape the consensual laws dependent on the legal, you could say, foundations which exist back then. So for it to then talk about police is really hilarious, and your whole argument, or rather the whole crux of your rhetoric, is you saying, oh, Mr. Pedophile, just this, just that, a whole bunch of personal name calling. When I'm doing the name calling, at the very least, I'm giving arguments. You're not even giving an argument. You think for some reason that me agreeing with you on you should be able to regurgitate information shits on my point. You're so fucking stupid. That doesn't shit on my point. That strengthens it, you idiot. That consolidates my points. My point is simply that her being able, not just being able to regurgitate the information, but she being able to understand the social context which shapes the meaning of the hadith is the type of thing which indicates that she's blessed, mentally speaking, and so forth, to put her on the same pedestal as other 9-year-olds who has shown the inability to do the same feats or replicate the same feat is retarded. It's absolutely ridiculous to believe that, oh, because other 9-year-olds don't have this sort of like mentalistic ability to consent, then it must be the case, or it is most likely that Aisha cannot consent. That's retarded, because I've literally given a good reason as to why she'd be a justified exception. You'd have to invalidate that, which you have not done. Then you talked about, oh, it's an ability of neuroplasticity. You retard. No one is denying the association in any way whatsoever between neuroplasticity and learning, you dumb fuck. I'm saying specifically that when you're claiming that the ability to adapt is what neuroplasticity is, that's false. Even the characteristic or consequential characteristic of neuroplasticity does not mean that it is in fact what neuroplasticity even is. That's incorrect. I gave it the actual definition of neuroplasticity. I've also explicated on the experiment which demonstrates neuroplasticity. You don't know what you're talking about, bro. You're just yapping your way through, hoping that at some moment you might actually see a good point. Now, again, with the other parts, really, you know, you were talking about the idea of there being some sort of like justification for it being the case that she cannot consent. You've not even given the justification, really. You've not even addressed the point regarding the idea that from a legalistic perspective, which you're appealing to, by the way, to basically make some sort of rhetorical polemic against me, that she would in fact be able to consent. A while ago, you're appealing to a legalistic standard. You're saying, oh, don't make the police catch you, Apollo, because you get locked up. Buddy, if we had the police back then, which we kind of did have police back then, but not in the same sense, they would not even condemn it, because guess what, it was legally consensual, or sorry, legally okay. So if we're going to be talking about legality here, that works against your point. I've told you this numerous times, that works against your point. Stop appealing to legality, because guess what? It would in fact be legally permissible. It has been legally permissible for several centuries. I'm not sure if you've done any history class. I know you're uneducated as fuck, so you might not know about this, but for several centuries in non-religious and religious domains, in secular societies and in non-secular societies, in Christian and Islamic societies, for example, and even in Hinduistic societies, This has been the legal foundation and building block for marriages. This has been the legal building block insofar as the permissibility of those sort of marriages. So you can't appeal to legality here, so just omit this from your trash argument. Moving on to the other part, you've not demonstrated or shown any sort of empirical study. Well, this is the question I have for you, actually. I would love for you to show me some sort of empirical study from some scientists or some biologists which establishes the impossibility of children to be able to understand the gravity of sexual relationships, the gravity of the responsibilities which comes with it, as well as the facts regarding sexual relationships. You'd have to show some empirical studies, some scientific studies to establish the impossibility or the inability for children to be able to cognitively understand and consent to these abilities, because you're making scientific claims here. You're entering the domain in the realm of science, and you're going to be making the claim that they cannot consent to these actions insofar as their cognitive landscape allows. So do you have any sort of studies in cognitive science or neuroscience or in biology which should prove that claim? The answer is no. You have no studies. You're just pontificating. And if you can prove me wrong and present the studies, go for it. You won't be able to present any studies, by the way, because there are no existent studies which establishes the factuality of your point. It's not a factual point. It's factually incorrect, if anything. So yes, maybe if you focus less on the whole, oh, Paul, you're a pedophile. Oh, Paul, your religion allows for rape, and focus more what's called, substance, and give actual legitimate arguments, actual legitimate hard facts, actual legitimate proof for your claims, then you'd have a better chance at looking good optically, at least to non-low IQ retards, the low IQ retards in the chat. But until then, you're not doing a good job in convincing anyone from a factualistic perspective that your point is correct or justified. I've done the latter, on the contrary. So that's basically it.
I just wanted to say a shout out.
Pedophilia, by the way, for the person in the chat. The argument is it's not immoral, or sorry, it's not the case that Aisha was not able to consent in the case of Islam. That doesn't mean that I believe that in the current society we should do this shit. I don't agree that in the current society there are people of that level of cognitive ability, given the supernatural blessings that Allah has passed down, which allow for that to be permissible. And in fact, Islam is against child marriage in the current times. Not that they're against child marriage in the case of Aisha, though. So no, I'm not pro-pedophilia. I'm just saying, hey, it is not okay in the current time due to the change or the modification of facts socialistically and cognitively. However, back then, in the case of Aisha, it was okay. That's an exception. So the whole strawman, you could say optical performances or strategies you guys are trying to pull off here, it's not going to really work on me. I'm sorry. I don't know why Drip Sauce is talking. Like, Drip Sauce, I heard he's like talking to like fucking 13-year-old kids or something. If that's the real Drip Sauce, by the way. I'm not sure if it's like an algae.
Nope, that's Drip Sauce. We got the real Drip.
I don't know why it's still muted, by the way. Hold on. Wow.
Oh, yeah, I know. Mod. I'm so sorry. I thought Bert was doing it.
Yeah, Allah is satanic, buddy. Anyways, you're right. Maybe I should stop saying things about like Apollo being a pedophile, because I only said it like once or twice within that whole like dialogue, and he thought that it was actually a part of my argument when I just told him that he might want to look out for the police when they find child porn on his computer. Like that's not a part of my argument at all. So maybe I should stop, because that's giving him more excuses to run away from the argument than actually address it like I suggest he did. So again, you're ignoring how neuroplasticity is thoroughly defined as I defined it. And it is the brain's plasticity or ability to recognize, adapt, reorganize, and still develop when talking about the ability to make informed decisions and explicitly provide consent as a necessary derivative. If children don't possess by definition these qualities, then they wouldn't be able to do it. So when I talked about how your definition of what it means to be mentally mature refers to neuroplasticity, and neuroplasticity doesn't refer necessarily to being able to necessarily have consent, then it would just prove your point wrong. Because again, in the example about how children are more neuroplastic than, say, adults, or like maybe middle-aged adults, like children can pick up multiple languages, most adults can't. That's just because of the neuroplasticity and the ability to regurgitate information. Aisha has this. That doesn't mean that she has the mental maturity to understand these concepts. And when you automatically just wrote in that she was understanding these concepts, you have no basis for that, because you haven't given us to it. You're just saying that it was a miracle by Satan, Allah. That's all you believe. And you have no empirical justification of this, nor do you have scientific justification of this. Because even the neuroplasticity definition kind of rapes you apart. And when talking about child marriage, historically speaking, again, the legality is not what's being talked about. The amount of times I had to lead you away from this line of thinking, like, because I'm obviously referring to a moral necessity here. If it morally is impermissible to rape, and I define rape as the ability to conceptually not be able to consent. If children don't hold this ability, then they wouldn't be able to consent. And if you have sex with a 9-year-old that can't consent, what is that? That is by definition rape, regardless of the legal definition of how he's protected by it. It's relevant. Like, please stop running away from the argument. And not only that, there are these other ways that consent is derived by that I listed to you that don't necessarily have to deal with neuroplasticity and Aisha being able to absorb and regurgitate information that can necessitate whether or not you can identify whether or not they actually or accept the grounding and gravity and understanding of the weight of the scenario that they're in. Now, for children, this is a gradual increase, such as difficulty in grades and education. That's like an obvious one, except if you're SPED or something. But then again, that would directly refer to your understanding of concepts and whether or not you can actually grasp the gravity of what these scenarios suggest. And you, for some reason, are like avoiding that. I don't know why. You just want to harp on the fact that I made pedo jokes at you because you're a pedophile and I think you worship Satan. But besides that, I don't really have any like thing to say because he keeps running away from the point at hand. We can't really continue if you're just going to keep avoiding the argument. Do you want to like conclude or something? Because it is kind of getting repetitive.
Making closing statements.
So just the points you made. I know you love to accuse someone of being a pedophile even though they're not, but I mean, if you think dating someone who's 2 years younger than you is a pedophile, is what pedophilia actually is, then not only have you demonstrated your ignorance on like religion and all this stuff and as it pertains to like what it means for someone to be able to consent, but then you're further demonstrating your ignorance on what pedophilia even is, you dumb fuck, because pedophilia is attraction to prepubescent children. Someone who's 2 years younger than a 19-year-old is not prepubescent, you moron. That would be pedophilia by definition. But moving on, since you want to go around and just, you know, throw around labels like, you know, hey, Apollo, you're a pedophile, I could just do the same thing back, and that's fine. So that's not pedophile, since I'm just using a rhetorical strategy and just to mock you, really. So pedophile, I'm not sure if you understand what's going on here, but I'm basically making the argument here that it is the case that if you're going to be appealing to, I never said you're only appealing to a legal standard, but if you were to be appealing to a legal standard for the mere justification for your claim, then that claim would fall apart. I'm not sure if you understand the very basic distinction between conditional sentences and non-conditional sentences, but that was basically conditional sentence, okay? Also, I was not saying that you calling me a pedophile was a part of your argument. I said it was a part of your rhetorical, you could say, attempt to convince the like your retards in the chat that you're winning the conversation. The other part is simply, your whole argument is, hey Apollo, if it was to be the case that children necessarily can't consent, then it would be the case they would not be able to consent. Like, no fucking shit. Of course, if necessarily children did not have the sort of like, you could say, framework to be able to consent, then they would not be able to consent. Make it a conditional sentence and prove the antecedents of such are proven that they necessarily cannot do this is different. You've not proven that claim, you've not established that necessarily speaking they cannot do this in any sort of like biological framework or any sort of like neuroscientific framework. You've not cited any studies whatsoever, just making a whole bunch of scientific claims, a whole bunch of biological claims about like how the way the mind works and all of that stuff. And you just really don't know what you're talking about. And again, the secondhand embarrassment watching someone like you just pontificating about things that you don't know about and words you can't even spell properly yourself because you're illiterate as fuck. Now, the other part is simply like, Apollo, neuroplasticity shit's your point. You're stupid. You're actually one of the worst dumbasses I've ever debated of this year. If you think the idea of one brain part, and by the way, just to educate you as well as the morons in the chat, what neuroplasticity is, by the way, not what you're saying it is, what it really is the idea or the ability of one brain part, let's say the right hemisphere, to subserve or take over the function of another brain part if that part was to be missing. That's the ability of neuroplasticity, which has been demonstrated from what is called rat lesion experiments and other experiments on different animals, whereas that happened in those animals. And this has happened amongst human beings. That's what neuroplasticity is. Now, the new question is, how the fuck does this have any relevancy to whether Aisha can consent? The answer is it does not have any relevancy, right? Which is why I won't be able to answer that question too. Also, you made the claim that Aisha, or when I made the claim that Aisha has this sort of like mental maturity and has the ability to understand the gravity of certain situations that require scientific evidence, you fucking retard. That's not a scientific claim. That's a claim which is grounded in the idea of some supernatural cause, you retard. Of course, in principle, you can't have non-scientific claims which are grounded by scientific evidence, you retard. It is the case that it'll be a category error. You asking for biological or neurophysiological evidence to support that claim is dumb as shit, because I'm not making a neurophysiological or biological claim when I'm saying Aisha has this sort of miracle. You can't undercut or defeat miraculous type claims with science, because guess what? The supposed response in most cases, at the very least, would be a category error. It is equally expected under the view that it was a miracle that there would not be any scientific evidence. If there was to be a miracle, it could not be understood or grasped by the various scientific foundations or equipments that exist, you moron, because guess what? It's something which lies and transcends the naturalistic functionality of reality, you dumb moron. So, of course, even if I was not presenting the scientific evidence, it wouldn't be evidence against the view, it wouldn't be evidence for your view either. If anything, that just further is expected by my view to begin with. And also, it's very obvious your burden shifts, and it's pretty obvious you've not proven the claims that children necessarily, given the empirics, cannot do this action. You've not demonstrated any claim whatsoever, which is granted by any studies whatsoever. And all you do is just, as the pedophile you are, just always call about or talk about someone else being a pedophile because you just love projecting your pedophilic instincts and you could say your sort of desires onto other people, which is really strange, by the way. But moving on with this, just for anyone who's listening to this debate and conversation, if you draw from this debate that this guy has proven this point, and if you draw from this debate that I'm supporting pedophilia, you're a retard. I'm not supporting pedophilia, especially in the current generation. All I'm saying here is that there's one exception, still talking by the way, there's one exception of there being a child marriage which is morally justified. However, almost universally speaking, it is not something which is morally justified, especially in the current generation, whereas kids of that age, I don't deem them to be mentally mature for them to actually engage in such. I'm done talking.
Jesus Christ, thank you. Okay.
You can go now, pedophile.
Let's work backwards again, because obviously you still don't understand what I mean when I'm saying these things. The scientific evidence supports the philosophical position. That's the entire point of my argument. Well, actually, let me ask you something first before I continue. You don't have to say anything else, just answer yes or no. Do you believe that scientific evidence can support philosophical conclusions or philosophical positions even? Just yes or no.
That's such an obvious question, bro.
It's obvious, but what he's been claiming obviously goes against like this notion. So I just want to ask him: do you believe that scientific evidence can support philosophical conclusions or positions?
Goes against the notion that scientific claims can support philosophical claims?
Can you just answer the question? If you don't, I'll just continue.
What did I claim which goes against the position?
If you'll just answer the question. Can you just answer the question?
Which goes against the claim that scientific evidence can support philosophical claims.
Can you just answer the question?
You made a claim that I did that say a claim which goes against the position.
Just how hard is it for you to answer questions? Jesus Christ. Okay, Apollo, may I go and ask you one more time? May I go and ask you one more time, Apollo? Does scientific evidence support conclusions? Yes or no? Yes or no?
Look, it's a very simple thing. You're asking me specifically, is it the case that you believe that scientific evidence, right, can support philosophical positions? The answer is yes, you moron. You made a claim that it is not the case. Or sorry, it is the case. I made a specific claim which goes against that claim. Now, what have I said in this conversation which contradicts the claim that scientific claims or evidence can support philosophical claims? Quote me right now. Tell me what I've said specifically. Go. Don't dodge. Give me the codes.
You told me don't dodge, or you just muted me. What the fuck?
Yeah, give me the code, dude.
Anyways, okay.
What have I said,
I'm glad that you admit that scientific evidence can support. Wait a minute. Wait a minute. Me I go on Babylon pedophile them. Anyways, me I go on elaborate. Me I go on elaborate. You have to be kid touching them. Me I mash up your bomber clot.
I just want to hear the claim I've made, which goes against the position. You're not going to just make claims and stack claims upon claims and not prove your fucking claims every single time. You just get pressed on it, right? You're going to make a claim. You make a dumb fucking claim. I made an assertion which goes against the position that scientific evidence cannot support philosophical claims. I'm asking you, what claim have I made in my previous response or in any part of this conversation which goes against the position that scientific evidence can support philosophical positions? What claim have I made? Tell me. Don't ramble and don't do a Jamaican accent freaking mockery. Just give the fucking evidence, you dumb idiot. What's the claim I made?
Yoo-hoo, can I actually continue
I
with my
want you to give the
elaboration
claim
from
I made.
asking you that question now? You just asked me a question that you don't even know if it has anything to do with why I asked you the question in the first place. Now I'm going to elaborate because I'm glad you said yes to that obvious question that scientific evidence can support philosophical positions. So your argument that somehow me using scientific claims or evidence wouldn't be leeway to that conclusion was just retarded. Anyways, the scientific evidence that I put forth that you keep ignoring was the process of things such as myelination.
Muted him. Dog, you're not gonna just run away and just lie about what the fuck the person just said, right? No one has made the claim that scientific evidence cannot support philosophical positions. I said that there not being scientific evidence for a claim which I'm claiming to be a miracle or an event I'm claiming to be a miracle will not be evidence against the claim. Now, nothing of that is insinuating in any way whatsoever that you cannot use scientific evidence to support philosophical positions. What are you talking about, dude? You just lying out of your fucking anus to fucking support your dumb fucking position because you have no evidence, dog. Don't run away, dude. Just, again, quote me. Give me the sentence I've said, which indicates that I believe that scientific evidence cannot support philosophical positions.
Unfortunately, I can't give a decisive judgment because I went to McDonald's like 15 minutes in.
This guy just like runs away from claims and shit, which is why I have to like mute this motherfucker. Like, holy shit, there's like the most.
Oh wait, oh my god, bro, you're supposed to moderate. What are y'all doing?
I want Clorox
to
nigga muted me because he was getting pressed. That nigga muted me because he a pedophile. That nigga muted me because he a pedophile.
That's what I want right now, dude. Oh, but my name is Clorox, and I just make claims.
Anyways, let me continue with answering to answering his question. So before he mutes me again because I'm about to rape him on his question again, like he believes rape is moral. So this is what I'm going to do to him rhetorically. Again, when I ask you the question, wait a minute, Apollo them, because you use this as an excuse. Wait a minute.
When did I ever say that rape is moral? When did I ever say this? When the fuck did I ever say this? I've explicitly stated on the recording that rape is immoral. What are you talking about? It's just so hilarious to me that you talk about tracking the ability when at the beginning of this conversation I literally said, of course, you both agree that rape is moral. So what the fuck are you talking about, dude? What sort of statements have I made in this conversation which is emblematic of me believing rape to be moral? Now you're just trying to lie to the fucking audience to just make it seem to be the case that there's a moralistic high ground when you really don't. You don't have any sort of argumentative high ground either, which is why you're running away to this optical game where you don't actually give an evidence and rather make lies about what the person actually believes in. Because funnily enough, on the same very recording of this debate we're having, which you're getting urinated on, right, I've explicitly made it clear that I don't believe rape to be moral. So what are you talking about? Why are you lying about my belief system to basically dodge and run away from your burden? You still have the burden to demonstrate.
No more running away by server muting me. Apollo, you're gonna let me answer the question. Apollo, you're gonna let me answer objections. Apollo, why are you running away from me? Why are you running away from the points I gave?
Go ahead, Clorox. Go ahead. Now it's your turn.
Okay. So okay. I hope everybody watching like the rec can rewind back to the justification I gave for child sex obviously being rape earlier and Apollo not addressing that, but again just questioning the connectives, which he can do is fair. But understand that doesn't mean that I haven't said anything in pertaining to justifying them, like logical proofs or justification, and the scientific evidence I gave, like this is the reason why I answered the question. He was using this as a route to avoid my actual justification for why it was rape in the first place to fuck 9-year-olds. So I'm not going to let up on him when I say he's a fucking pedophile. The reason why I say he's a fucking pedophile isn't because you date a 17-year-old with your virgin ass. Not that you're a fucking like super duper senior. That's not why I'm saying you're a pedophile. I didn't have no fucking clue about that. I'm just talking about how the fact that you can say that it's like morally permissible for a 55-year-old to fuck a little 9-year-old kid. I just think that that's enough grounds to already say you're a pedophile. And when I justified that by saying that it is pedophilia, not pedophilia, but rape essentially, because they can't consent for XYZ reasons, yes, it was a philosophical position, not a legal one. So I didn't know why you were talking about that. I was talking about a specific modality in which the conception of the human brain is determined by its mental development. And children, we know, do not have these specific things that in science justify this philosophical conclusion. I wonder why I answered the question now, Apollo. I wonder why. So now that we've all gathered around, now we're all caught up to speed and we're tracking now, I can finally make the goddamn argument so clear to you. So since this necessitates that Aisha, regardless of how mentally mature you want to say, quote unquote, she was, there were things that actually determined whether she could consent or not. So biology was one of them, and neuroplasticity was a weaker version of this, and I tried to show you why your example falls more into neuroplasticity than the other three categories I mentioned that actually support proper decision making and understanding gravity of concepts. So when you made the conclusion that, Aisha actually can understand the gravity of these concepts because I just said so and didn't justify it. Like I was telling you, like what you're appealing to doesn't actually justify what you're saying. And the same reason is why I took a bit of time to explain why the other three categories I mentioned specifically do justify what I'm talking about. So when I presume now that you're a pedophile, XYZ, you condone rape, etc., it's not about me talking about your specific statements to say, I do not condone rape. Mohammed be upon him. He was not a rapist. He was raped by black men in Africa, but he was not a rapist. I'm not saying anything like that. Like I'm specifically addressing how your arguments for why Aisha could even be able to consent at all just don't follow, and why mine do. And if you're not, again, for like, what is it, the fourth time now, going to address the argument with the scientific evidence in question and just beat around the bush and resort to me attacking pedophiles, like if I can just like insult you by you being a pedophile with a bunch of just different jokes and it makes you shadow box the entire point, like thanks for letting me know, because now I'm just going to do that the entire time. Now I'm going to say police be upon your prophet, penis be upon your prophet, because your prophet was butt raped by black men. Also, did you know that Muhammad was 54 or like 55 when he fucked a 9-year-old girl?
Okay,
that doesn't seem very morally permissible.
Okay. This is getting posted to YouTube, so just so y'all know, this is getting posted.
Yeah, the facts that this moronic ape drew from what I said that was given an argument as to why she can consent is retarded. Of course, I believe she can consent, but in this specific debate and circumstance, when you're making the claim, you're making the positive claim that it is not the case that she can consent. You're on the positive affirmation. You're just the one starting off this disagreement, right? By saying she cannot consent. You have the burden to demonstrate such. You're making physiological claims here. Basically, when you're saying that she cannot consent, I was basically establishing a dichotomy between you either saying that she cannot do this insofar as the legal foundations back then dismisses or impedes or mitigates that possibility, or you're making a physiological claim, or you're making the claim about what is possible in theory. I'm saying that under any specific option of whatever you're talking about here, your claim would either be unjustified, meaning it has no evidence supporting it, or it would be the case that it is false. Under the logical scope, it would not be the case she cannot consent because it is logically possible for her to consent. There's no logical contradiction. Under the legal modality claim or the legal modality perspective, if you're to be making that claim, I'm not saying you are, but it could be the case you're using it to justify the philosophical position. It would be the case that she can consent because the laws back then allowed for that to happen. It was legally permissible back then. Do your historical research, you dumb fucking idiots, that child marriage is okay. Even in the US, you moron. As I've told you, I've cited the studies, I've given you the specific researches, I've posted the links in the chat, and given you the case scenarios of there being a 12-year-old who got married literally in 2012 in the US, right? And I also told you that even in a predominant state, a prevalent state like New York City, right, it is the case that child marriage is banned only in 2018, okay? So child marriage has been something which traces back centuries back, and not just in religious societies, but in non-religious societies. Okay, Again, you talk about the idea, your whole response is just based off you attacking either me or my prophet, just really strange stuff, and it just demonstrates that you really don't have any sort of arguments, and you're intellectually bankrupt, and you have no sort of responses to what I'm saying. But not to mention, even if you want to look at things from a physiological perspective, you pontificate repeatedly. Oh, it's necessarily the case that children can't do this. You have not presented any physiological studies, any neurophysiological studies, any neuroscientific studies, any biological studies, no studies of the story from any empirical domain or any sciences whatsoever available to us to demonstrate the claim. You've not shown any studies whatsoever. You've not cited any studies at the very least to demonstrate or exemplify that claim that it would not be true that she can't consent. You've not done any of this whatsoever. So, in other words, your claim goes unproven and you've lost this debate. Definitely. Now, again, to go into the other parts about my prophet and so forth, dog, the person you deem to be God literally got fucking abused by fucking Roman soldiers, bro. Your God literally died, bro. Your God literally get fucking abused by Roman soldiers. How do you feel about this, bro? Like, unironically, that's even more embarrassing, bro. I would never bow down to a guy who literally got beaten the fuck up by Roman soldiers or just mere human beings. That's embarrassing, dude. I think that's even more embarrassing than the supposed, could say, allegations you're trying to make towards the prophet. But if you want to go into the ad homs, you can do ad homs between religion all day. But I'm pretty sure that that's not even the core part of the conversation. What you really care about here is the arguments, not the insults towards each of the religions. So how about you actually give an argument? Or if you don't believe that you are, or if you believe rather that you're wasting your time and you've given an argument, we can just conclude right here, right now, because I know that it is undeniably correct. You've not proven any free claims, any studies whatsoever, and you ran away from the substance to go onto the meta point, just get destroyed on the meta points also. I'm basically done here, I think. So if you have any more responses you can give the responses. If not, we can just give conclusions, and then we can just wrap things up from here on.
Okay, well, I don't mind if you guys give your closing statements. This is very good, very linear, very encouraging. Hell yeah.
Did someone get the recording bot or something?
No, the recording bot